welcome everybody to this Anatomage live webinar that is dedicated to the presentation of new features and tools of TableEDU 11. Today, we will have the first of the 3 episodes where we will explore some new tools available in the gross anatomy section, but also some new simulations that are available in the functional anatomy section. Before we begin, as usually, I kindly ask you to keep your microphone muted during the first part of the webinar, and at the end, there will be a dedicated Q&A session where you can either unmute to ask your questions or type them in the chat. So now let me share the screen of the table to get started.
The first new feature that we will see today can be found inside the visibility menu. So the visibility menu can be opened here from the eye icon, and here at the bottom we find 3 new icons that indicate the complexity level, that is the level of detail in the segmentation of the structure. This complexity level can be set respectively to basic, intermediate, or advanced. And by default, it is set to advanced with all the structures that are singularly segmented. While if it is set to intermediate or to basic, then some structures are grouped together. Now I will show you an example. So let me use the slider bar to remove all the structures until we get to the cardiovascular system. Now, for example, if I enter the cardiovascular system and the category of the great vessels, and if I scroll down, I see that the pulmonary vein, both for the right and left part, are segmented into the superior and the inferior. If instead I now switch the complexity level to basic, then the view is updated. I also get this warning message that warns me that the complexity level has changed. And if I now enter the same system, so the cardiovascular and then the category great vessels, and I scroll down, I now see that the pulmonary veins, both for the right and left, are now grouped as a single structure. Another example that I can show you is for the difference between the intermediate and advanced. So if I now switch to the intermediate, for example, and I update the view to remove all the vessels and have only the skeletal system, I will activate it from here. And I zoom a bit in the region of the foot. Here you see that if the complexity level is set to intermediate, I have the ligaments of the ankle and foot segmented as a grouped structure. While if I now change again the complexity level to advanced, I can now individuate the single structures singularly. So now each ligament of the ankle and of the foot will be segmented individually. Okay, please mind that the complexity level must be set to advanced if we want to use some features that are, for example, the quiz tool, or if we want to instead use the removal tool with the split screen. Moreover, the complexity level is also stored as an information within the preset. So if we save a preset with a determined complexity level, and then we recall that when the complexity level is changed, we receive another warning message. So now let me go back to the preset number 1. That shows the full body of Vicky, and I will now introduce you to the second new feature that is available in the gross anatomy. So if we now expand the layout menu, we can see here that there are some new icons. The last but one, this one, is relative to schematics. If I now open the schematics, you will see on the left part Vicky, and on the right part this schema of the body with the head, the arms, the trunk, and the legs. Each of these dots represents a simplified view of some vessels and the connection of the vessels in a more simplified way. So let me now open one of them, for example, this one of the full body arteries. And I can now on this part use again the slider bar to remove all the structure except for the cardiovascular system. These two views, so the 3D model and the schematics, are linked. It means that I can tap on any of the segment or on the schematics, on the diagram, to have, first of all, the name of the vessel displayed and also the corresponding structure in the 3D model highlighted. If I tap then twice, I have also the label that will stay linked to the structure that I'm selecting. If I now tap for the third time, then the annotation is removed. I can then tap on any other segment here on the 3D model, on the schematics to have it highlighted in the 3D model as well. The connection works also in the opposite way. So for example, I can tap on a structure in the 3D model to have the corresponding part in the segment highlighted. This tool can be used to display the connection between vessels and the bath of blood from and to the heart. On the bottom here, we can see some other icons. So the first one is to go back to the full body diagram. The second one instead can be used to rotate the diagram. So in this case, we have the diagram in vertical, and with the orientation icon, we can also rotate the body to have it in the corresponding view. And then with this other icon instead, we can switch the view from arteries to veins. In this case, so we'll have the full body veins and everything else works in the same way. So for example, now I can tap on the renal vein on the 3D model and have it highlighted here. Okay, so let me now go back again to my preset number 1, and I will now introduce you another new feature that is available again in the layout menu. So in the layout menu, we have another new icon that is this one, that is relative to the ultrasound simulation. So ultrasound simulation was already available in the table 10. Now let me load it, okay. Ultrasound simulation was already available in table 10, but now it has been further developed to offer an image that is a bit closer to how the real ultrasound looks like. So now, in addition to the color view that has this cone shape, we also have the black and white view of the structures that are, let's say, seen by the ultrasound probe in this cone. Let me just review very briefly how to move the probe. So we can move the probe by clicking on the body of the probe itself. We can then rotate it by clicking on the yellow circle, or we can also change the inclination by using this yellow dot. The probe, so the one new content that is available in the table 11 is the possibility of changing the type of probe, and we can change it from here. So the probe that we have now is the convex one that is suitable to have an imaging the area of the thorax, of the abdomen. We can then select the linear probe, so the one in the middle. Then the view is changed accordingly, and we can use this other type of probe, for example, to do an examination in the area of the neck or of the thyroid. And then the third type of probe instead is the phased array, which can be used to perform an ultrasound on the part of the heart, on the region of the heart. So the user can decide to have both the color view and the black and white view, or have only one or the other. User can decide to which view to display by using this menu here. So we can decide to split the screen in two, as it is right now, or to have just the view with colors, or just to have the one in black and white. The comparison between the black and white and the color view, so the default view that we normally have, can be very helpful if we combine this with the other tools that are normally available in in the 2D representation, for example, the application of flat colors to all the structures that are visible in this section, or also the highlight of all the vessels that are instead that are visible in this case in this cone. Okay, so I will now move to another type of dataset that is contained inside the functional anatomy section. So first of all, let me just introduce the new interface of the functional anatomy menu. In this case, in the functional anatomy, you will now have the 17 icons representing the 17 simulations that are available in these sections. And by clicking on any of these icons, you can then get a brief description of what the simulation is about. The first simulation that we're going to see is the renal physiology that I should have already loaded. Let me just switch to the dataset. Okay. So once you load the simulation, once you load the simulation, you can see on the left side the 3D model of the kidney with the renal arteries and veins. While on the right side, you have an histological scan of a nephron. First of all, we can apply some customizations. So on the left side, we can increase or decrease the level of transparency. So to remove the outer layers and have or to apply different transparencies to see what is below. We can also double tap on any of the structures to activate this other window that allows us to apply some other customizations that can be again a transparency but more selective, or also a flat color. On the right side, instead, we can customize the histological scan, first of all, by activating some of the interactive annotations. So by using this, the three lines icon, we can activate or deactivate the annotations all together or one by one, as we normally do with the annotated histological scans. So now I can activate some of them, or also all them together, and also some of the annotations. Once that I activated some of the annotations and some of the segmentation, I can then act on the level of brightness of this scan. So I can increase a bit the brightness to have the details of this scan more clear, or I can also reduce it to have only the scheme of the segmented part visible. In this simulation that is now stopped, but I can resume the simulation by clicking on the play button. We can see what happens in the 3 steps of the let's say of the renal physiology. So in the filtration, in the reabsorption, and then the secretion. We can decide to visualize the blood flow only, that is by default active here in the simulation, or we can decide to activate also the flow of some other substances. For example, I can activate water, and now you see that also there is also an additional flow inside of some vessels, both in the 3D model, but also in the histological scan, where you can see all these particles that move, and depending on the behavior of the substance, it will be filtrated or reabsorbed during the different steps. We can now change and activate, for example, sodium or hydrogen or glucose or creatinine, and see the animation changing in both datasets. Okay, let me now stop it, and we can now move to another simulation that is instead the respiration physiology. So let me switch to the other simulation that is also found in the functional anatomy dataset. So when this simulation is loaded, on the left side here you find a model of the lungs and the respiratory structures. Also in this case, we can adjust the transparency by using the slider bar. So if we wanted to highlight, for example, just the lungs and make the diaphragm disappear, or having all the structures visible until we get also the skin. And in this case, we also, if we tap on any structure, we can apply some other customizations by clicking on the action menu that allows us also here to apply the transparency or activate the label and so on. On the right side, instead, we have some graphs. So the first one is relative to the volume of air going in and out of the lungs at every respiratory cycle, while the lower one is relative to the pulmonary pressure, in particular to the alveolar and the intrapleural pressures. If we now play, so activate the simulation, first of all, you can see that there are some particles that go in and out of, to the lungs and out from the lungs that mimic air during breathing. And on the right side, instead, we see these waves that indicate how the volume and the pressure change at each cycle. To make these graphs a little bit more clear, we can first of all activate the labels. So in this case, we can see the difference between minimum and maximum tidal volume. And in the lower part, instead, we see which is the alveolar and which is the intrapleural plexus. If the simulation is stopped, we can then adjust some parameters. The first one that can be adjusted is the respiratory rate. So we can increase the respiratory rate, or we can also simulate a single breath cycle with the manual breathing that can be observed in the 3D model. So we can see how, for example, the lungs expand during inspiration, and then how they contract during the expiration, and also the relative movement of the diaphragm. We can then set different values for the tidal volume, and if the labels are active, we can also see the graph that changes accordingly to simulate different situations. Okay, then the last simulation that I wanted to show you is instead relative to the facial expressions. Okay.
In this simulation, you can simulate the movement of the facial muscles that produce different expression. The name of the expression can be seen here. So in this case, we have the simulation of eyes closed. And in order to see the movement, we can use this slider bar to see the movement going in one direction or then in the other direction. We can then, for example, change it to another expression to see the effect on the skin. But if we wanted to see also what muscles produce this expression, we can split the screen into parts. So we have two models of the same face, but on the model on the right side, we can remove some layers. So we can remove the skin, and we have the muscles visible. If we now play the simulation again, you will see that some muscles are highlighted in blue because they are the muscles responsible for this movement. And then on the other way back. If you instead wanted to deactivate this effect, you just have to deactivate the icon that has some regions colored. So this one here. So now you now have simply the muscles displayed, and you can tap on all of them anytime to have the name of the muscle, in this case platysma muscle, displayed here at the top. Okay, so now the presentation is over. I hope to see you again on Friday, when we will have the second part of the webinar, Friday at the same time, so 1:30 p.m., and then the next week for the last part. Thank you.